Obviously, today's topic is basically financing grad school. I mean, and one thing I like to do is when we start, I want you to introduce your name and tell me whether or not you're going to go to grad school, or at least are considering it. And if you are considering it, maybe you know a place that you want to go to, and we can talk about that. So I'm going to start with Janetta, and just introduce yourself and whether or not you're looking at potentially going to grad school or not.
My name is Janetta Long, and no, not really
Okay.
for that. No, because I'm doing the respiratory therapist and just planning on doing it.
Okay. Okay. Tom.
My name's Tom, and I am looking at grad schools. Oklahoma State is a very good biochemical school. I'm also looking at Raleigh and Kansas City. With the opportunity of a job would arise, I may not go to grad school.
Okay. Okay.
I'm Cheyenne, and I'm just thinking about it, so I don't know if I am or not.
Okay. And hey, this is the time to be thinking about it. I mean, especially once you start getting into that around that junior year, it's something to be really seriously thinking about.
I'm Amanda. Depending on which major I decide to go with, I'll definitely be going to a master's school anywhere.
Okay.
I'm Kayla, and I'm considering it, just not sure yet.
Okay.
Right, I'm Ashley, and I am considering either Arkansas or Missouri State University for higher academic studies.
Okay. And how many of you would say that in your field that a master's degree is almost required, at least close? So we've got quite a few there. And that's something that you should always be thinking about while you're in college, like when you're trying to determine what major you want. Because this is something, I did not ask these questions. I should have, I just didn't do it. But one of the things that you want to look at is if whether or not a bachelor's degree is good enough for an entry-level job. There are some majors where it's hard to get an entry-level job with just a bachelor's. Sometimes you have to have that master's or some other type of special, degree or certification. So I would always be asking yourself that, because ask yourself this: what if you say, okay, I want to go in this particular area, and I know that a master's degree is almost required, but I have no desire to go to graduate school. Could that be an issue later on down the road? Potentially. Like for example, I got my degree in political science. There's not a whole lot I could do with a political science degree after I graduated. I really needed to go on and get my master's degree. And then I started asking myself, okay, well, if I need to get a master's degree, what type of master's degree? Because do I really have to get into political science again? Or could I get something that was maybe kind of within the department, but maybe something slightly different? And that's why I went with public administration. I felt that it may be a little bit more marketable out in the job force, but I knew that a lot of the classes were still housed in the political science department. So it was still kind of closely related, so I went that route. And so you should always be asking yourself these questions, because if you really don't want to stay in college for 6 or 7 years, then you want to start looking at other options, besides, a master's program. And so now, once you've actually decided that you want to go and get your master's degree, you've got to figure out how to pay for it. I mean, that's the hard part. Because one thing, just to give you an example, is that most graduate school programs, you don't get Pell Grant. You think, okay, we're used to getting Pell Grant as an undergrad, and that really helps pay for a good chunk of that. But in grad school, you don't have that. So how do you finance primarily your education? The majority of it, student loans. What it normally ends up happening. Now that doesn't mean that there are other opportunities where you get money, but a lot of students tend to rely on student loans. And so we're going to talk about that, the benefits, and of course the cons of that. But a lot of students are just not really fully aware that they don't get Pell. There are a few programs, and I'll give you one example: education. Education has a little bit more opportunities when it comes to financing your grad school. My wife, for example, when she went to graduate school, or not, she didn't go to graduate school, but once she graduated, one of the things that she was able to get was, after working for kind of a low-income district, her school actually paid $5,000 towards her student loans, which was nice. Now, and a lot of schools, like Carthage being one of them, they will actually help pay for your graduate school. If you decide to go back, they give you X amount of per year, and per credit hour for going to work on your master's, which is pretty good. And so that is something to always be looking into, as, the employers, that you're currently at. So some things that we'll look at. We'll kind of look at grad school, graduate or, undergrad versus graduate school, kind of compare the two there. So let's think about this. As an undergraduate, how do you pay for it? Scholarships, federal grants, that ties into the Pell Grant. You have work study, jobs, and of course when I mean just jobs, that means, outside of work study, you're not working on campus, you have your own part-time job somewhere else that's helping probably pay for that. Or of course, loans. And so, how many of us have had work study here on campus employment? Anyone here have had that at one point? Okay, Ashley, tell me about it.
Right now I am working for the biology department and identifying bird species for the upcoming ornithology class.
Okay,
But
how many hours do you work, typically?
I can't go over 20.
Okay.
My highest shift so far has been 12.
Okay, and so, but you can't go past 20. Would you say, because I know that you work off campus as well, do you feel like that the work study, they work with your schedule a lot more?
Oh yeah. It's I got lucky with mine because I picked my own hours. A lot of the other work study jobs on campus, you have to, they'll work with your schedule, but it's like at a set time.
Okay.
Mine's just whenever I feel like going in.
So just they're a lot more understanding, flexible. You still get those 12 hours or so, maybe potentially a little bit more, just depending on the circumstances. And so I can tell you, when I was in college as an undergrad, work study was something that I benefited from. Yeah, I was a tutor. I tutored for student support services, and so it was a really easy job. I loved it because one, I got to help students, with some of their homework, but at the same time, it kept me sharp, on the material. But I also got, pretty flexible, hours. And so if I needed, for example, to take some time off to focus in on a big test I had, they would let me do that. They worked around my schedule. So as an undergrad, you see a lot of students benefit from work study. And when we talk about the job, I know Kayla, you work a lot of hours, outside of the college. And do you think that has helped you, with school? Being able to pay for it and kind of keep, paying the bills and.
Yeah, it helps paying for stuff.
Now, do they work around your schedule really?
Oh yeah.
So that's one thing to remember. Even most people think, okay, work study, they're going to work around my schedule. That's the type of job I want. But honestly, a lot of other businesses will work with you. Now, there's some that won't. There's some that tend to put their own needs over that of anyone else. But there are a lot of jobs out there that are, helpful and that will work with your schedule. Because at some point, most of you have to have work study or a job, in order to, to make supplemental, income. Loans. A lot of students rely on loans as well, to kind of make up, the difference, especially if you're going to school full time, you're taking 15 plus hours, maybe more, sometimes you just need to focus 100%, on your studies. And so sometimes getting some loans that will kind of offset, kind of give you a little bit extra income there, tend to help. One thing that you have to be, concerned about is that at one point, you'll have to go back and pay those loans. They say that, at this university, from some of the UE classes when they do those pods, financial aid pods, they'll say when you graduate from here, you'll be close to maybe around $20,000 potentially in student loan debt, right around there. Some have none, some have more than that, but on average, right around $20,000. And so we're going to talk about that, about how if let's say you graduate, you're on average $15,000, $20,000 in student loans, and then you decide to go to graduate school, it's going to be more potential loans. Normally, the biggest percentage of your student loans that you will have will most likely come from grad school because it costs more there. And there are some programs that won't allow you work. Just to give you one example, law school. Is anyone even remotely considering going to law school? Okay, Amanda. So I have a lot of friends that went to law school, and so a couple of them went to the Oklahoma City University School of Law, which is in Oklahoma City, for tuition. And for their books and the housing expense, because the first year they lived on campus and then they lived in an apartment by there, but it was somewhere around $40-something thousand, close to a year. But it's a private university, and so private colleges cost more, which is a big difference from public school. But what ended up happening is that this is something they don't always tell you, in the beginning. At least you don't think about it as an undergrad. Most law schools will not allow you to work your first year of law school. You're not allowed. If they find out that you're working, they can actually kick you out of the law school if you are working your first year, which is something that my friends, found out, kind of the hard way, because, they were always used to working in addition to going to school. And then, they wasn't allowed to work that first year. Now later on, after that first year, they were able to. But the reason why is because it is so intense, law school, and so much work that they have to do is, and the first year is by far the most crucial year of whether or not you're going to be able to make it through law school. Law school is typically 3 years. And so let's just say, for argument's sake, that you decide not to work during that time, and you are borrowing anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 a year. I mean, chances are you're going to leave, law school probably somewhere around anywhere from $90,000, well over $100,000 in student loan debt. Especially, if you factor in if you got any student loans as an undergrad. And so you always want to be considering it whether or not it is worth the cost. Now, I can tell you, my friends who went to law school, they make a lot of money. So that both of them have their own firms. Where them and a couple other people. And so, I mean, for them, it was worth it. It was worth the financial burden, in order to go to law school. One, that was their dream, and two, they felt that in time they could make enough money to be able to pay for those student loans that they had to borrow. They actually say that just kind of a rule of thumb is that you shouldn't borrow more than what your first year salary is going to be. That's what they tell you how much student loan debt you should have. So when you graduate and you feel like you're going to make starting $40,000-$45,000, then that should be around what you should have in student loan debt. Sometimes that's realistic, sometimes it's not. I have a friend that has over $250,000 in student loans. He did all the wrong things. He borrowed the full max almost every single semester, what he could, and he does not have a job in his field. So that's the bad thing. A lot of us feel like, well, it's worth the investment. When I graduate, I'm going to be making that $50,000, $60,000 a year, so it'll be worth it. He wasn't able to get a job. Now, that's for a lot of other reasons why he didn't get that job. I think he just didn't plan like he was supposed to. But now he has that, and it's not going away. It's just building up. And so what he has been doing is he's been taking 6 hours a semester so he can still be in school, because it's cheaper to take the classes than it is to make the monthly payment. And so he's going to be in school probably for the rest of his life. So you have to be careful. And so that's why we will spend a lot more time talking about loans, because it can become an issue. It can really weigh you down a little bit. Now, when it comes to grad school, there's a lot of various options. Departmental funding. So sometimes your department may have a specific scholarship that's just for those students. You see fellowships and assistantships, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in detail here in a bit. There's employer tuition reimbursement. So I'll just give you one example. Like I told you before about Carthage, and for teachers, a lot of times they will help reimburse some of the educational expense while you're working for your master's degree. Walmart. A lot of Walmart employees, for example, they offer tons of scholarships for Walmart employees. Not just graduate school, but undergrad as well. I think you typically have to work there about 6 months in order to benefit and be able to apply. But they do have scholarships. Obviously, there's so many different scholarships. And towards the very end, we are going to look at a database where they have tons of different scholarships. And so that way you can start doing research now. Obviously, student loans, that's where it comes into. I can tell you, I had to get student loans. I'm still paying my student loans. I pay $500 every month. I don't have to pay $500, but I'm paying more because I want to get it paid off. And so I'm paying more than I need. And so, but we'll talk about that as well. And obviously work study. There is work study even as, for grad school as well. And there's various types that you can do there. So some things we'll look at. The 4 rules of thumb, and for success. So, finish your degree with no debt if possible. That's always the dream, if you can. And it's not necessarily easy, but it is possible. Just to give you an example of how you can potentially do that. You work. Let's say you work full-time and you go to grad school part-time. There's always that option. When I was working on my master's degree, I worked during the daytime and I took night classes. They were 3 hours long. They're 1 day a week, per class that I took, and I normally took 2 classes. Most of you might think that grad school you have to be take 12 hours. It's not like that grad school. Full-time is 9 hours. So graduate school is 9 hours. And the reason why it's 9 hours is because you do twice as much work in there. One example, for when I started my master's program at OU, for one class, I had 5 textbooks. 5 textbooks. I'd never heard of a thing, 5 textbooks. And then I had all these online journals that I read. So it's more intense. It's a lot more work that you have to do. Now for my program, almost every class that I had, I wrote a 20 to 25 page research paper, every class. And so, but they emphasized more writing, in there. And so while you're working, you could potentially help pay for some of that, the offset, the student loan. Also, you find resources that will pay, for you to go to school. And there's tons of different resources out there. I mean, obviously scholarships, the place that you work at could potentially offer, some scholarships as well. Work study, is always good. I mean, and it doesn't mean you have to be a TA or a research assistant. I mean, there are various jobs on campus that you can apply for as well. Now, I will say the ones that you want are the TA positions and the research assistants. They pay the best. And I mean, some of these TA positions almost pay for your entire college to some degree. It's nice if you can get them, but they're very competitive. And then I would say student loans is only at the last resort, to go that route. Or keep in mind that, let's say they offer you this amount of money in student loans, do you have to take all of it? No. You can go in there and say, okay, how much do I absolutely need? And maybe you just borrow exactly what you need. Some of us, take the max, because like, hey, something could come up, I need this extra money. But I would say, be very careful. So fellowships. Fellowships is one of those opportunities. It's a merit-based scholarship, or a form of, academic financial aid. Assistantships, I think, are definitely important. That is basically part-time work is what you get. So an assistantship, for example, let's say you're a TA. A TA, may, teach a class. A survey class. So you're a graduate student and you are teaching a lower level, course, something that a freshman would take. That's a possible option. Or you're helping, a professor in a lower level class, and you may grade for them. You may help grade assignments. At OU, for example, a lot of the TAs, they would help a professor in a particular class, and they would do grading. Because some of their undergrad classes, you may have 400 students for one class. And so that's why that TA is important, because they're going to be doing a lot of that grading to help the professor. Now, what they may get varies, depending on the college. There are some colleges that pay better than others. I mean, there are some that will not only, you get free tuition, sometimes they will even give you a stipend every month as well. In addition to getting free tuition, you get a stipend, every month. And so I know, for example, MSU is a great college when it comes to all the opportunities they have, to help pay for, your college. They have a lot of TA positions, really good ones that pay good money. And so also, you can look at, employer tuition reimbursement. There are tons of different places that do that. I've already told you about Carthage and the teaching system. They normally offer that quite a bit. A lot of colleges, or a lot of schools actually do that. You may actually, let's say you're an employee here. Let's say you graduate and you're thinking about going to grad school. If you are an employee here, right now I think it's like 70-something% that you get, off your tuition if you're an employee here. But I think in the fall they're supposed to go to 100%. So eventually, if you're a full-time employee here, you get 100%, tuition waiver. That's going to be nice. And not only do you get that, but your, let's say if you have a kid or a dependent, they're going to get that as well. So working at a college can actually be a pretty good thing, especially if they have a lot of different master's programs. Now we don't have a lot of master's programs here, so you're kind of limited to a certain degree, if you work here and there's a program that they don't offer. But some of these bigger universities, they may have tons of graduate programs, and if you're a full-time employee there, you could get that tuition waiver. So I mean that's and some people go work for universities for that purpose, so they can get those benefits there. So, financial aid award, this is assistantships. Financial aid award to a graduate student for part-time work in teaching or research. And, designed to assist students in strengthening skills successfully completing a graduate school. So let's say if you want to be a teacher, this is great experience being a TA. You know, being able to work there, you know, or if you're wanting to go into research, I know, Tom, that you're more the science route, so you're thinking, you know about, you know, doing probably a research type area. And so there's a high likelihood if you decide to go as OSU, they offer a lot of, you know, research assistantships. And you probably have already been looking into maybe a few of them here and there. What have you learned so far from, you know, just your talks with them about some of the opportunities they have?
Well, any of the colleges in my field, they'll pay me to go to graduate school.
Yeah.
And waive tuition.
Yeah, and a lot of times you get a stipend also in addition to that every month.
Right.
You know, so I mean, it pays in some cases to go to grad school. I mean, in order to do that. You know, I've had some friends that got their tuition paid for, plus they got around $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, it wasn't a bad deal. You know, doing that. And so,
Actually, Missouri U offers 25 grand, so stipend.
yeah. Now the problem is sometimes it's very, very competitive, and so you got to do everything you can now to stand out in order to get that. I mean, you can imagine if you're going to get free tuition plus a stipend, a lot of people are going to be wanting to apply for that. And so what do you need to be doing in order to stand out? I mean, do you think GPA matters?
Yes.
It's probably one of the biggest things, you know, going into it is that GPA. You know, what else stands out?
Undergraduate research work.
Yeah, undergraduate research, you know, work as well. What else? What else could potentially stand out in that case to help you?
Volunteering.
Volunteering.
They
You
want
want to build a resume. You want to actually have some experience doing something.
They want to see that you can handle multiple things at once and be a multitasker. So
Yeah.
the more stuff you have, the better.
Yeah. You know, I've seen students who had a great GPA, you know, but they had like no work experience, and they didn't get it. You know, because you have to always be asking yourself, who else is applying for this? You know, does my resume, you know, compete with the other person? I mean, because it really is a competition. I mean, you are going against other people who want that, you know, TA position just as much as you. You know, and so test scores play a factor. You know, because most of the time you have to take a GRE, you know, or maybe the LSAT, depending on, you know, what program you're going into. And so those grad school, you know, scores are important. Your GPA is important. What experience, you know, what you've been doing, you know, during that time, volunteer work, all of it stands out. It's very competitive. And so, also, you know, usually made within a student's academic unit, but students may accept, you know, assistantships outside of that. MSU is an example of that. You know, so let's say, you know, you decide to go to MSU in Springfield. You know, they have TA positions in your specific area, but they allow you to actually apply for TA positions that are not in your area. You don't see that a lot, and they actually do that. So you can actually do an assistantship in a completely different area, you know, than what you're going into. That actually gives you more options about getting that TA position. So you're not just confined to one specific department. You can actually apply to other ones as well, which I think is really nice. So the TA position, directly involved with producing student, you know, credit hours, so you know, you get credit hours for it as well. Now they have different types. They have the teacher assistants, which is the TA. They have the teaching associate, which is a little bit more advanced, you know, kind of position there. And so you can see that especially with like doctorate students, PhD students. There's a research assistant, which I think is going to be more in Tom's area when he decides to go to graduate school. That's what he's going to be encountering. You know, and they may be doing stuff that helps them, you know, with their thesis, their dissertation, when they're working on their PhD. You know, they'll do a lot of different research. I can tell you that at OU we had quite a bit of TA positions where we were assigned a student or a professor, and we helped them with their research. Maybe they're working on a book, they're writing a paper or a journal, and we're helping them actually find the sources, you know, that they need in order to write that book. So in some ways it's a little bit of grunt work. I mean, you basically do whatever they tell you to do, you know, in some ways. And there's others where they help specifically for a class. You know, it just depends on the department and what they need. You know, I mean, there's some that are just graders. You know, the student that I was telling you about that took that $250,000 altogether, well, he was a TA as well. He did that, and he kept on maxing out on student loans, which is something you shouldn't do, but he did that. But one of the things that he did great, you know, for his TA, he taught, you know, a survey class. He did that. He actually co-taught it with another TA, so they taught it together. And then he also graded for a professor. And so, you know, it depended on the semester, it depended on what he did. So he did a variety of different things. But by doing that, he got his tuition, essentially paid for, and he got a stipend. And so, so the thing of it is, if you get that, should you be maxing out student loans in addition to that? Probably not. Keep in mind, you always have to pay back. And one thing they don't always tell you, you have to pay more, like your percentage-wise, for graduate school loans. They cost more. You pay a higher interest rate for graduate schools. Loans. Like right now, as if you're getting undergrad and you're getting some loans, I think it's hovering around 3.8, close to 4% in that kind of in that range. Well, a lot of times in graduate school, it's more in the 5+, 6 percentage, is what you pay. I mean, that's a lot higher, So I mean, it's going to take more, to pay back. They will say if you borrow, let's say you borrow $100,000 altogether, when it's all said and done, that's undergrad, and I gave you a handout that kind of breaks down some of those expenses. That's going to give you a little bit of detail. The majority of your student loans is probably going to come from grad school compared to undergraduate. So I mean, a huge percentage will come from that because it just costs more. But let's say you borrow, and you can see the percentages on how many, like if you're around the 40,000 range up to the 80,000. When you take the 40,000 people who are 40,000 less, and you take close to 80, that's a pretty big percentage when you add those two together. And so let's say you borrow somewhere between 60 to 100,000. Let's say you borrow 100,000, and you're paying somewhere around 5%, back or somewhere in that range. If you do the bare minimum payment, I mean, and honestly, if you borrow $100,000, chances are that's what you're going to be able to afford is the minimum payment, because $100,000 loan, you're probably going to be paying around $700, $600 to $700 a month, for the bare minimum, close to it in that range. And if you do that for the max, you will most likely end up paying probably around $180,000, $190,000 back when it's all said and done. Maybe slightly more depending on that interest rate where it's at. So you almost double what you borrow, if you do the bare minimum payment for the duration. And honestly, I think that is, what they are doing to students, I think is wrong. In my opinion, I don't think students should have to pay that high a percentage, for borrowing. I just don't think that. I think it's wrong, personally. I think you should have to, pay it back, but should you really be like my interest rate? I'll give you an example. My interest rate is 5.875. I know that interest rate well. Because I encounter it every month. I'm paying this, so it makes me think about it. A lot of students don't even know what their interest rate is. That's a red flag right there. Be aware of what your interest rate is. And so I'm reminded every single month when I make that payment. So like I'll give you another example. I think when I graduated, I was at 64,000. Now it's down to around, I think 50,000, kind of hovers in there right now. But I have paid more in interest than I have paying them back. That's that's crazy. I think they said I've knocked off like 12,000 or whatever, but I've paid like 13,000 in interest or something like that. I mean, it's crazy. I have paid more in interest than I have towards my loan. I've been paying since 2009, and I've gone from 64 to around 51 in that time span, and I'm shelling out. And so, because my payment would be around $350 a month, but I'm paying $500 because I'm trying to make a dent, at least a little bit of a dent in it. And so every month, and so I can tell you, I did not even think about all the things that I needed to do while I was in grad school. Everyone told me it's good debt to have. If you're going to get any type of debt, you want to get student loans. That's what they told me. Mistakes were made. So I did this, and so now I will say my credit score has gotten better. Because I've never had a credit card in my life. The only credit I've ever had is basically paying back these student loans, and so my credit score is in the 700s. And so my credit is getting better because of that. But that's a big payment. That is almost like a mortgage every month. That $500. And so that's the reality that sets in when you're paying that. Because if you ask yourself, do you really want to be paying $500-600 a month for 20 plus years? It's probably not something you want to do. And so I would say always be thinking of various avenues to get that money. Now, I only tell you all this stuff. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just saying no one told me this stuff. They just didn't tell me about it. They just said follow your passion, go to graduate school. They didn't give me the details of how to pay all of it, you know. And I was a first generation college student. I didn't, you know, my parents, they're not going to know about this stuff, and so I worried about it, you know. And I do think it's worth it in the end. You know, I have a job that I really like, you know, but it was a lot of work to get there, and I just wish that I would have planned a little bit better, you know, along the way. But it didn't quite happen. So, an example. So Missouri State University, because I want to give you kind of a real life example, you know, somewhere around here. You know, they offer 2 different types of scholarships at MSU. They have what they call the institutional fund, you know, funded scholarships. These are actually funded through the college. So, I mean, they have various scholarships that are related that are funded through the college. TA positions, research assistant jobs. They have quite a few of those. And they also allow you to apply for other ones that's not in your area as well. Also, they have a lot of, you know, donors that, you know, give gifts. That's kind of similar to what we have here. How many of us have applied for foundation scholarships? So it's exactly like that. They have their own donors. They have a variety of different scholarships there that you can apply for. And so very similar to how it is here when it comes to that. You know, right here's their web, you know, where you can go to their, you know, their link and check out all those different types of scholarships. Now, obviously, you know, we won't click on it now, but you can go there anytime you want, look at all the different options they have. How many of us even remotely think we could potentially go here to this college? Okay, so we got a couple, and you seem to like you're certain you're going there. And so, and I don't know if did you go to the trip with us when we went there to MSU?
No, I went on the Fayetteville, Arkansas trip.
Okay, because I know that they talked a lot about these scholarships, you know, when we were there. And that's one good thing that you can be doing along the way. You know, you can actually go and visit these graduate schools. You know, we do trips all the time. We'll certainly, you know, be doing one in the fall. And it'd be good to go to one of those. Check it out. We actually will set it up where you can, not only you go there, but you'll get to sit down with the department that you're interested in. You'll get to talk to someone one-on-one. They normally do presentations when they talk about all the scholarship opportunities that they have there. And so this is the time to be doing the research. I didn't do that. I just didn't do that, you know, as an undergrad. I mean, I focused on my studies. You know, I mean, I did well, you know, but I wasn't preparing as much as I should have been. I just, you know, as I got closer to graduating, I was thinking, okay, what am I going to do now? And I figured, well, I need to go to grad school. And then, you know, people were just telling me, oh, you can get student loans for that, it'll be fine. That was it. I mean, that's basically what they gave me. So this is your time to be doing the research. You know, ask all the questions now before you get there. It just makes your job easier, you know, kind of in the end. So here are just some of the things that we talked about. You know, research the colleges you're interested in. I do think that's important. When you are applying to graduate school, you need to probably apply to at least 2 or 3 colleges. Because what if you don't get into one of them? Or, look at it this way, if you apply to the 3 different colleges, what if one offers you a better deal than the other? That could work. I mean, that even goes to undergrad to a certain degree. Like when I graduated with my associate's degree, I received a scholarship. It was through Phi Theta Kappa, but the amount differed depending on what college I went. And I ended up going to Southeastern Oklahoma State University because they offered me the most money. And so I didn't have to get any student loans at all as an undergrad. All my graduate loans came, you know, when I was in graduate school. And so find the best deal. Yeah, and do you really need to go to a private university? That may be another thing you have to ask, because you can go to a public institution versus a private one. You know, because normally it's like double the cost.